any of the aspects of this seem a little different from a webinar, that's why. So welcome everyone. I think we'll have more people filtering in, but good afternoon. I'm pleased to welcome you to our webinar, Creating New Jobs and Enterprises Through Zero Waste. You are in for a treat with our exceptional lineup of panelists. The response to this webinar has been extraordinary. Over 200 people have registered, and as of yesterday, we had people registered from 5 other countries, including New Zealand, South Africa, Mauritius, Ireland, and the UK. The majority of the people here with us today are from the state of New York, though many other states are also represented. And I'm going to ask everyone to stay muted because there's going to be too much noise if not from the lots and lots of people here. So today we have many recycling coordinators, some elected officials, public works superintendents, and local and state agency staff. We also have leaders in the zero waste movement at the community level, regional level, and nationally. And we have other interested members of the public. And there's a recycling coordinator just getting on. And I'm hoping that we have some social entrepreneurs as well. And I think we have people from the climate movement. So regardless of your affiliation, we are glad that you decide to spend some time with us today. I'll be your host. My name is Tracy Frisch, and I'm the chair of the board of the Clean Air Action Network of Glens Falls. Glens Falls is a small city on the Hudson River located about an hour north of the New York State capital of Albany. Glens Falls is the site of a cement plant and a paper mill, and just a couple miles south of the city of 14,000 people, there is a 30-year-old trash incinerator called Wheelabrator Hudson Falls. Glens Falls is the only city in rural Warren County, New York, but it also that county has the highest cancer rate in the entire state of New York, according to the State Health Department. 2 years ago, we formed the Clean Air Action Network, which we call CAAN, with the mission of reducing air pollution and protecting public health. Our top priority is shutting down the incinerator. Towards that end, to demonstrate that there are better solutions to the problem of wasting than incineration or landfills, we have a very active zero waste planning committee, which meets twice a month, and we will soon be celebrating our first victory with the county. Since as a committee, we were not clear on how to proceed with reuse and repair, we decided to bring some of the country's leading experts together to learn from them. So thank you for participating, everyone. Reuse and repair are important from many angles. They can be drivers of job creation. They can generate sales tax and other measures of economic activity. From an environmental, climate change, and energy perspective, reuse and repair can have a big impact. Mining and drilling for resources, refining and processing them, or harvesting them, as in the case of lumber or agricultural projects. Then manufacturing goods and materials, transporting them, produce, all these processes produce a very substantial percentage of our carbon footprint. When we waste goods and materials, rather than passing them on for reuse or repair, we are wasting large amounts of embodied energy and other often scarce resources. One could even say that wasting in this way is a crime against nature, but do not despair. There are good models for turning our consumer society around, and that is what we are proud to present today. We believe in the power of education, inspiration, and networking. Our goal today is to inform and motivate people in our region, state, around the US, and the world to develop reuse and repair programs and businesses. And we're just hoping that we can plant a seed and that seed will grow into new activities. So I'd like to thank the various people who made this webinar possible. First, Neil Seldman, who organized the event for today for us. I will introduce Neil momentarily. Second, this webinar was made possible by the generous contributions of CAAN members. CAAN is a low-budget grassroots organization. We're all volunteers, with the exception of our part-time contractor, Abby Peckman, who's our media specialist. Abby designed our website and the poster for this event and will be assisting with any tech issues today. Third, I'd like to recognize, whoops, I'm getting a little confused here. So I'd like to recognize and thank Abby for the skills and talents applied to this webinar and numerous other projects. And finally, I'd like to thank everyone who shared the webinar notice with friends, colleagues, their networks, and various listservs. With your assistance, this webinar's existence has gone viral. And thank you, of course, to the presenters. If you are moved to support CAAN's work, we'd like to encourage you to make a donation. Just go to our website, cleanairactionnetwork.org, and you'll see a donation button on the right. We currently have an extremely generous individual donation of $5,000 that we must match by June 1st. So perhaps some of the participants today will be able to help us meet this challenge. Neil Seldman will introduce, so I'll tell you how this webinar will proceed. Neil Seldman will introduce the topic of reuse and repair, and then each of the panelists will speak for 8 to 10 minutes. Following their presentations, I will read questions that have been posted in the chat or that were submitted when people registered. If a question has already been covered, I will skip it. A few things to be aware of today. We're going to ask everyone to stay muted since we're going to have more than 100 people. Please post your questions and comments.
What is this?
Excuse me, could someone mute everyone?
It's the camera.
Abby, can you mute everyone?
I'll be on top of that, yeah.
Okay. So you'll please post everything. Please post in the chat if you have something you want to be asked. We will save the chat and either send the chat to everyone by Monday, or we'll copy any links and share them in a document. If you need any help, technical assistance, please message Abby in the chat or email Abby at contact@cleanairactionnetwork.org. The webinar is being recorded and everyone who registered will receive the link by Monday afternoon. And we will also be emailing you a list of the presenters, their websites and email addresses, and possibly other resources. So on to Neil. Neil Seldman has been active in the US and international recycling and zero waste movements, and is a founding member of the National Recycling Coalition and the Grassroots Recycling Network. He is co-founder and president of the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, where he runs the Waste to Wealth initiative. You can find many illuminating columns by Neil on the ILSR website. Neil provides technical assistance to cities, community groups, and businesses in the field of sustainable resource management. He has pioneered developments in processing, building, deconstruction, and small-scale manufacturing from recycled materials. He earned his PhD in political theory at George Washington University and was a manufacturer in New York City and a university lecturer in political science before joining the world of zero waste. So without further ado, take it away, Neil. I'm going to make sure Neil's unmuted.
You'll just have to unmute.
Yes, I'm sure that will help. Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Abby, for the work and all the people who've joined this. It's a pleasure to be with old friends and new friends at the same time. I have been working in the field of recycling and reuse for quite a while, and I'm just thrilled to have the people to present today because they've done so much good work. I'm going to introduce each of them right now, and then we're going to go in order of Mary Lou Vandeventer from Urban Ore, Elizabeth Knight, the activist and author on this subject, Mark Foster from Second Chance in Baltimore, a deconstruction group, enterprise of nonprofit enterprise, and of course Jacob Hannah, who works with the Reuse Corridor, which is a network of reuse, recycling, and composting, which is recently emerged. I do know from organizing this session that there are so many other people, from university professors to entrepreneurs, who could also have presented. And as we continue this series, we will get as many people as we can recorded, so we will have everyone's presentations as historic documents. We are going to have another reuse webinar for our friends in the Big Island of Hawaii, Recycle Hawaii, and we'll be sending out announcements about that. It'll probably happen next month. So let me just say the interest in reuse is important and well-deserved. Reuse items are just maybe 2 to 3 to 4% of the waste stream, but once they're handled by the companies we're going to be talking about, it's worth at least $500 a ton. The reuse organizations pay a significant amount of sales tax. Markets are local. You don't have to ship them to China. And by making used items available in good shape, it's an important source of income and wealth transfer. That's why we're interested in this. And now let me introduce you to our presenters. I've known Mary Lou for quite a while, and she is an environmental writer, and she's also a principal of Urban Ore, which she has a partner with her husband, Dan Knapp, and they have been running Urban Ore for quite some time, quite an iconic operation. Elizabeth Knight recently co-authored a book, which I will advertise right here, The Repair Revolution, with the late John Wackman, another great environmentalist, writer, organizer who recently passed away, unfortunately. And Elizabeth is both a writer and an activist and an entrepreneur. So we certainly welcome her. Mark Foster, I've had the privilege of knowing for quite some time, maybe 20 years. He was a successful entrepreneur, businessman who decided that reuse and the nonprofit world was for him. And he founded Second Chance, I believe in 2003. It has an incredible record of employment of hard to employ people. And they're also perhaps the best negotiators with cities I know that have gotten remarkable contracts with the city to help them grow and to solve many of the problems in the city. And finally, certainly not least, is Jacob Hanna, who works for the Reuse Corridor, a very exciting group. Luckily, I've been allowed to spend the last 9 months at their meetings. I recently wrote up a piece on them. I could not, my writing at least, could not capture the energy and vitality of this incredible group of seasoned veteran activists and young people coming into the field. So without further ado, I want to get right into it, the presentations. I'm going to ask Mary Lou to start. The 4 speakers will have 10 minutes. I will interrupt them at 8 minutes to let them know. And then we will have dialogue with over 100 people out there. So Mary Lou, I'm going to ask you to start, and I will give you a nudge in 8 minutes.
Thank you very much, Neil. And I want to thank you for introducing me that way. I am in partnership with my husband, Daniel Knapp. He's the founder of the company, really, and I sort of hooked in, and here I am. I'm also in here now, too. And this is our 40th year. So that's how long it's been. Time flies. And I'll just now, without further ado, I'll show you what we look like. People say, oh, it's easy for you in Berkeley. We're in Berkeley, California. People say it's easy for you in Berkeley because all the politics are correct. And it must have been very easy. Well, no, not really, but it'll work. And this kind of thing will work anywhere. So I'm hoping that I'm sharing my screen. Am I sharing my screen? Anybody? Can you see my?
As of yet.
No.
So you've hit share screen and then you've selected
Yes.
the presentation and then you've hit the blue button share.
Yeah, share screen. And, oh, share. Ah, yes. Can you see it now?
Perfect.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, Urbanor is our company. Dan came up with the name, which is a really good one, because we are mining the city. We are not mining the land. I am an environmental journalist, formerly working with Friends of the Earth and Sierra Club. And it's real important to me, as it is important to Dan, to do business in a way that sustains the planet and builds our culture to sustain the planet. We also think it's important to be for profit, because that's how people will be able to model us. Now, when you're for profit, this is a really long slideshow. There's no way I could give the whole thing. So I'll just show you what we started as. The Berkeley had in 1979, when Dan actually started salvaging there. The company became formalized in October 1980 and incorporated in July 1981. But when he started salvaging there, this is what it looked like. It wasn't even a municipal solid waste landfill. That's the baklava from hell. This was just an open dump. And he was looking up at the tipping face, and people would dump over the cliff like that. And sometimes their cars would go over too. And the landfill machinery would be left to bring them back up the cliff. And they were a little the worse for wear by the time they got back up the cliff. But this is where they started salvaging, down at the bottom, because people would dump from up on high. And sometimes they would enjoy themselves by throwing things at the salvagers to see if they could hit them. And this is what it looked like from the other direction. This is San Francisco Bay. 35% of San Francisco Bay shoreline were formed by dumps, municipal solid waste dumps. But the city of Berkeley had a vision in 1979 and mandated salvaging for reuse. And a nonprofit actually began the effort, and they existed for a year and then they went under. And Urbanor arose from their ashes. And this is what we look like. And that's our very first signage right there. Drop metals here. We were salvaging for reuse, but we were also salvaging for metal scrap, because that was immediately saleable. So there's Dan on the right in those days. And we were salvaging for scrap, and other people took it to market. And this is what our store looked like in the beginning. People say, "Oh, you have 3 acres in Berkeley. We can't match that." Well, we didn't start out that way. So here's what it looked like when we started out. This was very rough and ready. That was our first major piece of equipment. That was when we upgraded. And the big thing about that vehicle was that we filled the vehicle was a mess, but it was enough to get around on the dump surface, the landfill surface. And the thing about it was we spent most of the money on that vehicle filling the tires with rubber and foam so that flats wouldn't make a difference, because you won't be an hour without getting a flat out there. So this was our first sales yard in town, where Dan opened. Dan is in the yellow hard hat there. And Dan opened this sales yard to divert materials from the dump. We salvaged at the dump, but we were trying to intercept them before they got there. And this is the yard that he invented to do that. This yard had a fence, and that is all. It didn't have electricity. It didn't have running water. It didn't have anything. It just had, it was vacant property that was fenced in, and that was what we needed to bring things from the dump and salt the sales area with stuff that had been salvaged from the tipping face, and organized. Organization is the key to selling recovered goods. And if you look in this photo, you'll see, well, you won't see dishes and housewares and things like that. It was started as, his in-town sales area started as building materials, because people were a little more willing to buy a door, whereas they might not want that set of china that had dump all over it. But we started that way, and he became expert in doors, in different kinds of doors. We had to move all over the place, but we never shrank from speaking truth to power. You have to be able to speak truth to power. You have to do honest business. You can't not report your sales. You have to pay all the sales tax. And it's the most effective way to do business anyway, because not only are you contributing to the community, but also if you want to grow, you cannot afford to do business under the table. People still expect us to do business under the table, and we just don't. We self-published things. We did a lot of speaking truth to power, more than the people in power were comfortable with. We defeated garbage incinerators, but then the dump closed and we had to move in town. And this is what our facility looked like then. It was all out of doors. And in California, it's a lot easier than if we were in a place that had snow. We can sell things outside, but they get rained on. And the sun will also kill things just as fast as the rain. Then the city, when the city built the transfer station, this is what it looked like. We were very pleased that we had a solid concrete floor to salvage on. And this is our sales area and what it looked like at the time. Then we opened another facility about 6 blocks away where we recovered, well, the first iteration of it, we called it a flea market, but that turns out to not be our best market positioning. But we did then merge, let's see, where am I? I'm getting out of sequence here. Okay, we opened a warehouse about 6 blocks away, and then we moved off the city land next to the transfer station. They had given us this land, and it was an incubation project for the city. They gave it to us free until we were bringing in $11,000 a month. And then we started paying a percentage of our income as rent to the city. And by the time we moved on in 1983, and by the time we moved off in 1989, we were paying market rent. So we rented a warehouse 6 blocks away that had 2 acres next to it where we could co-locate both the flea market, which we renamed the general store, and the building materials yard. And they were right next to each other on 2.5 acres. And we were paying commercial rent, which at that time I think was about $6,000 or $8,000 a month for the two. But then we lost our lease and we had to move again. And so we had started at the dump, we moved to the transfer station, we started a sales area. Well, we started here. Our sales started here, moved to here, moved to here. Then the dump operation moved to the transfer station, then moved to here where we were co-located. And finally, in 2002, we were able to move the entire operation to a single 3-acre piece of property down here. We thought it was 2 miles away. We thought, oh, we're so far away from the dump, we're going to have a really hard time selling things. But it was
Mary
the
Lou,
only.
2 minutes, Mary Lou.
Okay, it was the only property in town we could occupy. So we did that. Now we own it. And we still salvage. We pick things up that people call for, and people drop things off, up to 100 vehicles a day. We have, because of COVID, our staff was reduced from 42 to now it's back up to 32. And this year, we hope to make $3 million, bring in $3 million. Last year, we brought in 2.7, which was a record year for us. We'd been stuck at 2.6 for about 4 years. Last year, we brought in $2.7 million. We paid $20,000 a month in sales taxes. We recycle, we scrap 1,000. We made $80,000 last year on non-taxable scrap. And we expect to be able just to continue growing. And in 2014, this was our community benefit. Last year, we paid out, I think, $150,000 in purchases for resale. We collected $240,000 in sales taxes. And we pay now about $120,000 in property taxes. We are a big financial community benefit, and we're trying to help people all over the world really figure out how to do that. Every town needs a facility like this, and you can scale it up and scale it down. We helped one community in Oregon start up a facility like this in a town of 650 people. And it ran for about 15 years. I think last year they ran out of volunteers to run it. And so now they're not doing it anymore. But, you know, it works. Recycling, reuse works, and nobody can tell what is a reusable until a reuser takes a look at it, because it just depends on what the market will buy. And I'll tell you, it's hard to predict the market. They'll buy so many things.
Mary Lou, thank you so much. We'll get to questions after the other presentations, and thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Elizabeth Knight, who is from the upstate part of New York. So she's telling us about her hometown, her home region. Elizabeth, if you're ready.
Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Yes, you are fine. You're speaking fine.
All right. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So Mary Lou, I am so jealous. What you have managed to do is what I really wanted to do. When I first moved to Warwick about 8 years ago, and I saw the amount of things that were kicked to the curb for the spring bulk trash pickup, I began to ask, well, where do these things go? How much is picked up? Why don't we have a reuse facility in our county? And the answer was, well, we don't. And we didn't have the resources to put it together. So I started out with a repair cafe to see if I was the only person who cared about this in my area. And it turns out I wasn't. Repair is a key part of the circular economy. As one of our repair coaches says, it's really good to make useful things stay useful and out of the trash. The DEC sends out a regular recycling newsletter. This one goes to about 30,000 people statewide. They have highlighted our efforts for nearly 3 years. It's also, repair was specified as one of the strategies for reducing state greenhouse gases in the draft recommendations of the Waste Advisory Panel to the Climate Action Council. Specific mention was made of repair skills training in schools and support for community-based repair businesses. And much of that was due to John Wackman's efforts. And we'll talk more about him in a few minutes.
Elizabeth,
excuse me?
Could I just ask you to hit F5? That way it full screens.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand what you're saying.
Could you on your keyboard just hit F5 up towards the top of the keyboard, and then it will full screen.
How's the, it says connect. It's asking me to sign in.
I wouldn't bother with that then. So try hitting view.
I don't know where that is.
Move up to just under the orange bar, hit view.
Just further left in the middle. Okay.
I don't have that.
Okay.
Or actually, do you see where it says resume slideshow?
No.
Okay.
It says,
okay.
I'm going to ask people to just bear with it not being perfect. We tried to do practice beforehand, and we're just going to have to bear with it. Okay. If they fix it, they fix it. So let's go on.
okay.
It's fine. You know, we'll live with it.
Okay. Martina Postma pictured here was a journalist who wrote about sustainability issues. After the birth of her second child, she was even more concerned about what kind of a world am I leaving behind. And she did a one-off pop-up repair cafe to encourage people to learn that they can fix things in community. Now there are over 2,119 repair cafes in 36 countries, and there are to date 180 in the US. Okay, so why is it called a cafe? Well, part of what Martina brilliantly realized was that if you're offering something warm to drink or cool in the hot weather and a couple of snacks, people will sit at a table and have conversations with each other, and that helps build community too. Here are just some of the logos of some of the many iterations of repair cafes, fix-it clinics, the Restart community in the UK. So I got involved in starting a repair cafe, as I said, about 4 years ago, and that's how I met John Wackman. He was inspired by a 2012 New York Times article about an interview with Martina Postma. John went on to found the first repair cafe in New York State. It was at a church in New Paltz, and for many years until John's untimely death last January, John was the coordinator, communicator, and cheerleader for repair cafes in the Hudson Valley, Catskills, and the Capital District of New York. And after every repair cafe, because of my business background, I used to do a recap of who would come, where did they come from, what kinds of things did they bring, how much did we fix? And I just used to include John on the recap that I would share with my volunteers, and that led to being asked to invite an invitation to participate and help co-write the Repair Revolution, which came out last October. So what kind of places host repair cafes? Churches, libraries, solid waste management authorities, towns, sustainable clubs. In my area, the Senior Center at the Warwick Town Hall is where we locate ours. Gritworks in Newburgh has a co-working space. That's where they host their repair cafe. Even surprisingly, historic homes and gardens. Libraries are particularly strong supporters of repair cafes because they foster hands-on learning. It's not just out of a book, you see it happening in front of you. So here is a repair cafe in action. Sharing skills, reducing waste, making friends, having fun. What actually happens at a repair cafe? Well, the important thing to know is it's not a drop-off service. People bring their broken items and they talk to skilled volunteers who will attempt to repair it with the owner's help or without if they're not comfortable doing it. And sometimes the diagnosis is as simple as replace the vacuum bag. What kinds of things do people bring? These are photographs of the woman on the with the plaid shirt is carrying a mirror. Almost, you can't predict what's going to come through the door. This is one of the favorites. The coaches said, I can't believe somebody brought that one in. Lamps are the most popular item brought in for repair in the entire US. We had a woman in line one time waiting to be helped, and she held up her table lamp and said, you see this? This is a dumb lamp, but I don't want to have to go to the drive 40 minutes to Target to buy a new one just because I don't know what's wrong with this one. And it's not always just that you own one. When I was starting my repair cafe, a member of the Chamber of Commerce said, well, aren't you concerned you're going to be putting local places out of business? And I said, first of all, where around here do you get a lamp replaced? And second of all, as in our very first repair cafe, a 9-year-old little girl walked in with one of a pair of lamps that had sat on her grandmother's nightstands. Grandma was no longer with us and the little girl wanted the lamps fixed. You can't buy that at a big box store or even at a local store. It's about what does it mean to you? Repair coaches also see a lot of fans, toasters, blenders, record players, clocks, and other small electrical items, even keyboards and musical instruments. We have repair coaches who not only repair musical instruments, but they bring in their students and sometimes give us a concert. This is an email I actually got one morning, a couple of days before a repair cafe. We have somebody who's a former teacher who does a lot of our sewing repairs, and she's very adept with the zippers. Hand and machine sewing repairs, darning, patches, zippers, hems, and other alterations are possible. And sometimes what people really want to know is just how do I thread my machine? A repair cafe has been famously called a stitch in the fabric of community. Repairing and mending with neighbors and friendly folks you don't yet know is a handy way to create community connections. John told me when I started my repair cafe, he said, you think you're going to be keeping things out of the landfill, and you are, but what you don't yet know is you're going to be building community connections across all divides. And you see it happening in a picture like that. All age groups, people from everywhere. Now the sign says teddy bear, and that looks like the back end of a giant giraffe to me. But as one repair coach famously wrote to me, more than one parent comes in, followed by a teary-eyed kid holding a frayed, worn, torn lovey. The look on the kid's face when we fix items like this is what gets us out of bed on a cold or rainy morning.
2 minutes, Elizabeth. Great presentation. Okay. 2 more minutes.
Jewelry, whole families participate. The man in the center, those are his kids. He's an IT expert. We do a lot of wooden repairs. Let's see, and out of the box things, 5-minute upper body massages, wordsmithing, help you with your resume. Sometimes, even when the glue doesn't hold, they say the best repair is just listening to each other. A lot of things get fixed. On average, about 70% of the items. The stack of tickets on the right shows you over 300, only 17 we couldn't fix. Why? We didn't have the right part, enough time, or the proper tool. You'd think most people would be delighted that we fixed their thing, but what they say most of the time is, thanks, we had fun. I want to, the little boy holding the blue shirt, 13-year-old volunteer. I asked him what it is about the repair cafe that appeals to him, and he said, this is a direct quote, with the news saying so many sad and depressing stories, it's nice to know that there's a place in town where people will help you for no other reason than they know how and they can. It gives me hope. Most repair cafes are not holding in session now due to COVID, but Yorktown is holding its second outdoor repair cafe with social distancing in the fresh air. There are plenty of Zoom repair cafes. And the Repair Cafe TV has not only ongoing Zoom repair cafes, but they keep a list of ones that you can go back to the recording and see how the problems were solved. Here are some useful websites. And I would encourage you to ask your local library to pick up a copy of Repair Revolution for you, because it gives you, from our experience, we contacted more than 100 repair organizers and volunteers across the country. This is their hard-run knowledge about how to find sponsors and volunteers to help you start and sustain a repair cafe. Thank you very much.
Well, that was terrific. I want to make a couple of comments, if I may, as a moderator.
Please.
One, the technical information you presented, the technical information in the Repair Revolution is terrific, but the anecdotes you're telling about the human relationships and community building are equally as profound. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to mention the Right to Repair, because we are in touch with Gay Byrne from the Right to Repair Association. She may be on the call, but she made us, she made Tracy and me aware that there's a bill, a New York State bill, the Breslin-Fahey bill for right to repair in New York State. So we're all looking for that. I also want to mention that I had a conversation with Professor Cynthia Eisenhower of the University of Maine, and the comment is that the academics are paying a lot of attention to the repair phenomenon. So we're going to be hearing a lot about this in New York and around the rest of the country. Thanks again, Elizabeth, and we'll get back to you with questions.
Thank you.
Next up is Mark Foster, Second Chance, Baltimore. Mark, are you ready to proceed?
I am. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I'll be right back.
Let's do that. Everybody good? Everybody see that? Fantastic. Good afternoon to most. Good morning to some. And thank you, everyone, for allowing us to be part of this webinar. The proverbial expression about putting 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag would be appropriate. So I'm going to do the best I can to roll through a PowerPoint presentation that we first created in 2003. And of course, we've modified it over the years to to be appropriate for the particular venue that we're using it in. And today, hopefully, I can share this with you. And if I don't get all the way through it and or you want a version of it, please feel free to email me and be happy to send you what you're about to see. Mission statement, of course, for the organization. I'll go through it. You can read it later. We're really about job training, workforce development. We have a retail operation as well as a thriving deconstruction business, donations, acquisitions. Basically, they are opportunities for us to get people on a pathway out of poverty, a way to take returning citizens, which is our primary focus, and to get them in circumstances where they can start on that pathway. So the organization is really, as we call it to many of our program participants and associates, a vehicle for their success, but it really depends upon their motivations and their abilities to utilize us to achieve that success. So often in the world of organizations, I've found it's easier for people to understand the complex nature of Second Chance by seeing the elements of it in something as simple as a diagram like this. For us, although you'll find out later, we don't do a lot of external fundraising. Any of these particular circles would be particular funders who may be focused on job training or historic preservation or recycling. Most of them, of course, job training, workforce development are huge elements out there in the funding community, but we want them to understand all of the elements of what the organization is involved in, so that if they are interested or have an affinity or an affection for anything that we do, they are clearly going to understand it by looking at this particular chart. We are, again, first and foremost, a job training organization. That requires candidates and people. We started out, and as Neil referred to when we first met in 2003, that we worked with the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. We still do. In all of your communities out there, you are going to have an employment development office or organization of some type that is a place for you to find a pool of candidates. The important thing in all of this is to get a partner, as we have over the years developed employment partners, and they serve a number of purposes. The first and primary one is that they are pre-sorting the candidates that will come into our job training opportunities. And as you might expect, they are limited, and we would like to spend as much time on those candidates that are most likely to succeed and most motivated. Our success rate of people entering the organization and matriculating either through it to another opportunity, which you see listed along the bottom, or staying with the organization is roughly around 60% of the people coming in are sticking throughout the relationship with the organization. And we put, as you might expect, a lot of effort into that. Whether you take walk-ins, people off the street, is entirely up to you. If you were to, kind of venture down this path of recreating a second chance or a version of it in your neighborhood, obviously they don't come with any of the case management services, which might include housing, transportation. It could be child support, all those issues in which many of our community are struggling to develop relationships that are successful with all those external elements that really impact the person's ability to get to the job. And so we like to have employment partners that are able to assist in that circumstance. So our job training opportunity normally is an introductory 6 to 18 months. We feel that if we're going to change behaviors, we're going to need a minimum of 6 and most likely 18 or more. But if we get that opportunity of sustained employment and opportunities to interact with our associates, we can move them on to any of the opportunities that you see listed below, either continuing employment and increased wages and responsibilities with us, or other ways to do the same thing externally to Second Chance. How do we get materials? Obviously, we have, as you'll see later, a thriving deconstruction business. It travels from Florida to Maine, basically east of the Mississippi is where we will travel to do our projects. And that material is returned to the warehouse. We'll do this year 250 whole houses, meaning roof to the foundation, completely deconstructed, all that material coming back to Second Chance. We have what you might see as an equivalent of goodwill, which basically speaks to the idea of donations. Acquisitions basically is defined by we call you, donations is you call us. I won't belabor what happens to the materials. Obviously, there's a number of ways you can read for yourself there. And again, I'll share this later. Talking about the organization and its growth, one of the things that we were asked to share, which of course, as a nonprofit, all of this is available to anyone who asks for it, and it's also available on our 990s. We started in 2003 with 4 employees. Obviously, you can see our annualized revenues now exceed 11 million last year. We expect 2021 to be coming in at a little over 12. We make net income on our revenues of about 15%. You'll see obviously on the next page what that means as you move forward through the years, and you can utilize that money not only for improving your programs and extending the reach of the organization, but doing more for more people. I won't bore you with the philosophy of the 3 Ps because it's really central to us, that we help people who want to interact with us understand that they're doing good things. If they want us to help them speak about it, support that, we certainly will. But we all understand that making a donation is beneficial from the tax benefits that one would receive. Retail business makes up about 38% of our revenue. Our deconstruction business this year will bring in about $7 million, and that's about 60% of our revenue. The balance sheet basically talks about net assets, meaning free and clear of debt. In 2011, we had about $3.5 million of net assets. We own our building. We have a little debt associated with it, but in 2020, we finished the year with $13 million of assets that are unencumbered. So we can borrow against that to expand Second Chance to a city near you if Philadelphia is one of our targets, as is Northern Virginia. Progress report kind of talks about some of the elements of Second Chance and what's been able to be achieved over the last 15 to 17 years. Obviously, creating new jobs in an empowerment zone, which is a part of a city in our jurisdiction. It's designed and described as one that's the more difficult parts of the city to do business in or to attract businesses to locate in. So we are now somewhere, if you start with us, you're going to start at a minimum wage as we screen you and assess you and work with you to elevate your wages over the course of the next 6 to 18 months, putting you in a position to try to find what your interests are, what your passion might be, whether that's within our organization or externally. If you've done what you need to do with us, we can put you on the pathway to success. We have external relationships and connections that we can utilize to help you achieve that.
Mark, there are 2 minutes. 2 minutes, Mark.
Thank you, Neil. We like to and have developed programs that support the local community. We find ourselves not only as an element of what we do for the people in the community, but also as a means to support people who are doing, for instance, plays, and they need props and they need materials to create something for a high school play, anything along those lines. We recently supported the outfitting of the new police office that they needed some help with some furniture. So we'd like to do that and consider ourselves a way to contribute to the community on a broader mechanism. As we've grown over the years, of course, everybody's going to start at some point as unknown and awareness is minimal. We've become now much more well-known within the community, and therefore is leading to more phone calls, more referrals, more people being aware of what we do. Our warehouse, we bought when we purchased our warehouse in 2011. It was 17 acres and 300,000 square foot building. We occupy about 12 acres of that and 250,000 square feet of retail space. So we have a large retail presence in an area that the city is focused on bringing businesses to that area and improving traffic flow and safety. So we hope that we've contributed to that. We believe we have. The more you do this and the longer you're at it and the more you can achieve in terms of having some wherewithal to affect change, the better off you are. And one of the expressions we use commonly is it takes money to save the world. So great intentions are admirable, but at the end of the day, as Neil referred to, my background was business. And so we run Second Chance as a social enterprise. We feel very strongly that we need to look at it as a business that serves the community. It's self-sustaining, which means basically our revenues come from what we do. And I want to make sure that everybody understands that we are here for the purposes of helping the community and finishing up with it's a great job to have. Really enjoy it. Have enjoyed it for the whole time, and I'm willing to share with anybody who wants to reach out to us. Whatever it is we can share, we're happy to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I just want to point out that people may want to ask Mark on this show or afterwards, just talk to him about working with your city, because he's worked out some terrific contracts with the city for getting access to buildings as well as getting access to workers who need to come into the main economic stream. And I want to thank Mark for teaching me that Second Chance is not only recycling materials, they're actually recycling people as well. I think you're up to 170 workers now or something like that. So
240.
Oh my gosh, I haven't talked to you in a while, Mark. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Now we're going to move to Jacob Hanna. We've been talking about with Mary Lou and Mark, individual companies, a lot of individual companies with Elizabeth Knight, but with Jacob Hanna and the Reuse Network, we're talking about a region of the country, the Appalachian region, on how this incredible network of composting, reuse, and recycling has come together. So Mark, if you're ready, please start, and I'll give you a nudge in 8 minutes. Thank you, Mark.
Sounds great. All right. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So my name is Jacob Hanna. This is Coalfield Development. We are a nonprofit organization here in West Virginia, as Neil was talking about before. And I got a lot of slides, so I'm going to fly through it here. We are obviously a coal-centric economy here in West Virginia and Central Appalachia. And right now, a common phrase that is circulating the conversation right now is, what is a just transition for Appalachia? How do we start to pivot away from these old dying economies to something else that's more diversified and opportunistic for the people in the region? And so a just transition, in our definition, is the first fruits of a new economy should foremost prioritize the well-being of those left behind by the last economy. So a lot of times you'll see, especially overseas, a very top-down approach to phasing out coal, phasing out old industries, whereas we're coming in from a bottom-up approach, focusing on the people to bring about the systems that make the change happen. And so that's where our motto comes from, rebuilding the Appalachian economy from the ground up. So what does that mean? We are a triple bottom line organization, meaning every decision we make has to equally consider the environmental, the social, and the economic impact. They all have to be intertwined together, and none of them operate or exist in a vacuum. And so through our nonprofit, we incubate social enterprise, as was mentioned before. Enterprise is a very versatile model that takes the tools of the for-profit world and the empathy and the structure of a nonprofit world and really blends them together to make maximum impact for community level initiatives. So we help incubate 7 different social enterprises, ranging from solar energy to woodworking to composting to agriculture, t-shirt making, deconstruction and reconstruction, et cetera. And so those enterprises hire folks specifically facing barriers to employment, whether they're unemployed coal miners, they're folks coming out of opioid recovery, whatever your background is. We want to focus on that demographic and reskill them through on-the-job training. And then all those pieces come together to focus on a strategy to revitalize dilapidated communities in a strategic economic way that contributes to the neighborhoods, the people in those neighborhoods, the businesses, et cetera. And what a typical work week looks like for our trainees is 33 hours a week is on-the-job training in any of those social enterprises that I mentioned before. 6 hours a week, they're pursuing a higher education degree in the classroom. of their choosing that we pay for. And then 3 hours a week, they're pursuing a personal development curriculum, life skills for financial literacy, emotional competency, things that all of us in this room sort of take for granted that we grew up understanding or learning. We reinforce those tools as assets for our trainees. So by the end of 2.5 years, you've got a well-rounded individual that's gotten paid for their trade, has a life path for their education, and has sort of the soft skills to be able to tackle the problems in life. And so these are outdated numbers. All of these are far beyond what they are right now. But the latest that I have for you is 200 new jobs have been created, 40 new businesses supported or created, over 800 professional certifications issued, 60 new degrees earned, over 195,000 square feet of space has been revitalized, and $16 million in new investment has been drawn into the area that would normally be just a dilapidated post-coal region. So these are some images from some of the efforts that we do. This is an abandoned strip mine in West Virginia that we've repurposed to be an agricultural hub. We believe reuse sort of goes beyond just products, but is a reuse mindset, is a reuse lifestyle. So reusing those post-coal infrastructures. And those raised beds are reused wood materials from dilapidated buildings. So this is just one site that was on a former strip mine. This is an old abandoned building that's in an old coal town not far from where I grew up. And now it's a coffee shop with a local development authority hub inside of it with apartments above it. And it was all revitalized through our trainees, through our workforce development program. So again, not just revitalizing products, but people and places as well. So how does this all, though, tie into that big question mark of actually recycling, reusing actual items? And in Appalachia and in West Virginia, you know, this topic can get a little touchy, can get a little tricky. Everything's been hyper politicized these days. And so if you mention, you know, a Green New Deal, or if you mention a certain political elements of recycling, the room gets icy sometimes. And so what we like to do is take the conversation back to the basics, that reuse isn't political. It's something that's been done for generations. The older generations in my family and a lot of families in the area, if something was broke, they fixed it. They didn't have the money to go out and buy something new. Or if it was broke beyond repair, they used it to add on to something else to make something new, or they traded it up for something else that they could get benefit from. Nothing was ever thrown away because no one could afford to throw it away. And so it's returning back to those innovative Appalachian values that create new things out of the inherently valuable items around us, no matter what they may be. And so some more international background to the situation we find ourselves in. This is a graph showing the relationship between the world's recyclables and where they were going, specifically plastics, but this is a representation of the larger recycling relationship in the economy of the international market. In 2016, you know, we were all sending all of our recyclables to China to be processed. In 2018, China passed the National Sword Act saying, listen, we're not taking any more recyclables because there's too much crap that comes along with it and we can't process it. And so they completely stopped taking all the world's recyclables down to a very small margin. And so that has had a huge ripple effect throughout the rest of the world, including us here in Appalachia. And as we know, if we're looking at the trends of landfill rates and production rates, that trend isn't going downwards. It's staying steady as to how much material the world is producing, how much material America is producing. So what do we do about this? Again, here in my neck of the woods here in Charleston, West Virginia, we completely halted all of our citywide recycling. That's a city of 55,000 people. That's our state capital. I know it's probably small to those California numbers, the presenter earlier, but it's a pretty large metropolis here in Appalachia. And then in Wise County, they've had to halt several of their recycling components. And then Huntington, where I'm at, there's absolutely no citywide recycling or composting at all. So enter in our organization, what I was talking about before, how we focus on reskilling people to repurpose regions that repurpose products. This is an old dilapidated building in our region that we deconstructed and upcycled the wood to make the products you see on the right. How do we take that same line of thinking and superimpose it upon this broader regional problem? And so we started looking at our partnerships. Appalachia is not wealthy. So we have to figure out, how do we take advantage of pre-existing low-hanging fruits? Marsh University, which is next door to us, they produce a lot of food waste on their student body campus. We produce a lot of sawdust from our wood shop. Let's put those two things together and make a high grade quality compost that we can sell. Wayne County has a whole bunch of clothing textiles that would normally go to a landfill. Cost money, cost time, cost labor, cost landfill fees. Let's divert them to our other partner that is a mushroom farmer, that they can shred those textiles to be the necessary fibers for mushroom growing. Same thing, on and on and on. How do we sort of connect these dots that are fractured supply chains that once connected can create value and reduce costs of operations? No matter if you are a full-scale recycling center or if you're just a mom and pop shop, this applies to you. And so this is our region of impact so far. The green counties are the areas where we have partners or organizations that are active in the process of upcycling or recycling, or just active in the movement of materials. And the yellow areas are sort of the secondary splash effect, where there's a collaboration and expansion for opportunities. And we're hoping to reach up there in Pittsburgh soon as well. But also hearing the presenter before me talk, I'd love to reach up into Baltimore. That sounds awesome what y'all are doing up there too. But I digress. We were able to catalyze 2 different grants, one from the Appalachian Regional Commission and one from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. There's a plethora of grants out there that are aimed towards reuse if you know how to integrate them into workforce development, which is what we do well. And so we were able to put together a strategic plan, which Neil has been on our calls observing. And that plan sort of outlays the broader push, the regional push for getting more of this integration into the strategy of reuse as a cultural value in this multi-state region. And then simultaneously, we have this grant to host these pickup events, collection events for just the public to come in and drop off their materials.
2 minutes, Jacob.
Perfect. And so that is a no fee entry. They could just come in and drop off whatever materials that they want. This was our electronics drop-off event here in town, where there is no recycling whatsoever. It's a town of 60,000 people, and so they brought in all of their electronics. We tied it directly to our partners, who has a connection to Dell Computers, so it's all upcycled, and there's a value chain there as well for reimbursing those costs in that time. Similarly, we have events with large football games. 20,000 people come out and tailgate. No recycling whatsoever. We partnered with our other organizations here and got an 80% diversion rate for those valuable items as well that would normally end up either in our river or in a legal landfill or in a dump. So this is what our coalition calls look like. There's Neil in the top left there, as you can see, always taking notes and helping us out. We're always grateful to have him. And this is what our partnership structure looks like now. Again, this is democratizing reuse, really. It's no longer leaving it up to these big recyclers that have a monopoly on the market, but instead it's making it make sense every day to the operations of the supply chains, of the waste streams of organizations, no matter what their structure or size. You can be a nonprofit, you can be a governmental organization, you can be a for-profit business, a university, no matter what you are, it makes sense to plug into this. And so again, our workforce development component is reskilling these folks. The minimum wage in West Virginia is $7.45 an hour. Right now we're paying $10 an hour for our entry trainees and $15 for the crew members that have had 6 months into the program. So these are some of our trainees, and these are some of the products that are made from those recycled rescued materials. Those pots and planters and table coasters are all plastics that have been melted down and reprinted through 3D printer. Those desks you see and tables, nightstands, all recycled wood that they're pulled out of old buildings. The shirts there are made out of shredded plastic bottles that have been repurposed and processed through a 4-stage system that makes a fine grain, very soft textile to be turned into a shirt. And the compost obviously is from the food waste and bio waste as well. So that's just a few amount of products that we're selling. And so again, back to that broader narrative, the two negatives make a positive. This is an old abandoned factory in Huntington, West Virginia. It's going to become an open air market to capture these materials as a way to store them and aggregate them and have a system, but as well as having like a maker space as well. I'd love to get in touch with that the Maker Cafe as well. I'd love to have one of those, Elizabeth, in this building too. And this is an abandoned strip mine outside of a university that's being used as a composting facility to capture their leftover food waste to turn to compost. The leftover compost is repurposing that topsoil on that moonscape of that strip mine. So it's really healing the land, helping the people, giving them certifications and job opportunities, and turning that waste into value-added products. This is a for-profit organization, first of its kind in the world, that takes any sort of plastic, whether it's a broken hanger or bottle cap, and turns it back into its pure virgin form. And so they are wanting to tap into our supply chain of a reuse corridor partnership and bring in those plastics into their model as well. Every day down the Ohio River where I live at, there's always plastics flowing down in. So this is a way for us to capture that and send it into their processing capabilities as well. This is the Tug River. 2,000 tires were pulled out of it and repurposed into playground material that's soft for children. And also that river is now a tourism booster for the region. Folks go up and down kayaking. We had the largest fisherman expo there as well in the region. And now it's an asset to the community rather than just a pollution base. So again, all this ties together, enhancing those local tourism economies, enhancing the businesses in the area, shortening the supply chains, reducing the costs to waste streams, and also creating new job opportunities for folks who are facing those barriers to employment, and democratizing those systems to where you're not just relying on one big organization to hopefully come in someday and start recycling. It's getting it done quick now today in a way that makes sense to the businesses in the region, especially a region as hard hit economically as Appalachia. And so this is a systems change branch. I know I'll be on my 2 minutes, but know that we're talking about it. We're planning about it, how to make it a larger system. We're working with the Ashoka Foundation. It's really fun, really cool. You can find more information about it on our website at Coalfield Development. And I'll end with sort of a visual that we're remediating places, that's transforming products and empowering potential. Thank you. And now I'll breathe.
Wow. First of all, thank you all, 4 of you, but I want to thank you, Jacob, for introducing a new concept, democratizing reuse. And I see it's captured my colleague Brenda Platt's imagination because she mentioned it in the chat. I also want to point out, when I was a kid, I had to take my father's and neighbors' shirts to the shirt hospital, which repaired collars for people who couldn't afford new ones. So that was my early introduction. What I think we just heard here in these 4 presentations are the seeds of the new epic that we're all working to create. The composting, the reuse, recycling has been incorporated in all of these presentations. And most important was the human factor. We're all driven to this by improving the human condition. Without any further ado, there's great questions. I'm going to switch back to Tracy, who is going to. Tracy, are you ready to get to questions?
Well, I'm a little overwhelmed, but because the presentations have been spectacular, and I'm inspired by everyone, and thank you so much. So I'm going to ask a really easy question. Can we custom order t-shirts, Jacob?
Yep, I just put that in the chat. You sure can.
Okay.
We have preset designs, and you can put in your own custom design too. I put our
Okay.
link in the chat here that you can check us out.
Okay, so there are so many comments, and it's been impossible. I've done this before, but this is overwhelming. So if anyone has questions, type them in again. And I will just mention a few things that I didn't say before, and then we'll hopefully have some more questions, because there were a lot of comments about how wonderful it was, but not a lot of specific questions.
Well, Tracy, let me tell you that I have plenty of specific questions. So
good. So you go first, because I'm overwhelmed.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just going to start off. I'm going to ask one question to each of you. I'm going to start with Mark. Mark Foster from Second Chance. Could you just give us an inkling of your contract negotiations with the city of Baltimore that helped you acquire your physical space and also get access to people who want the jobs you're creating?
Be happy to. I think in our iteration of Second Chance, initially, one of the primary sources of direction and support was the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, who gave us an entree into how to do workforce development and job training, and how to utilize the city resources to the best of our capacity and ability. Having that kind of foot through the door was key to being able to get into other doors. both within the framework of workforce development, job training, as well as work, as well as contacts, relationships, credibility, all the things that would come with relationship with the city. Obviously, program participants, our first floor employees in our deconstruction training program, we're all through the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. There's also funding available for that job training that occurs through the city, who generally is administering federal dollars. So you can, in our case, we got 50% of the wages, uniforms, and some other support for our trainees through their training period. And any startup, obviously, as one of the slides had, what it would take to bootstrap an operation of our nature is what we did. Certainly, you could go out to the funding community and raise your initial dollars and go from there. But if you're bootstrapping, of course, all those relationships will matter. So access to other government organizations that were important to us when someone was demolishing a historic structure, and we started off with preservation of historic elements, which was in our circle diagram. As a key element, the city was able to connect us to the historic preservation community, who was impacting people who wanted to use tax credits for renovations. Clearly, some wanted to do it at a level that would give them the tax benefits for restoring it historically, but many wanted to benignly take out historic elements and replace it with something that wouldn't issue tax credits, but would be more in line with their development plan. So all of those, I think, is what Neil's referring to, that if you needed a start, the great place to start would be with your governmental local organization, who can open many doors for you. If you do what you say you're going to do, and with integrity and with vim and vigor, they will get behind you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. And I believe Jacob's experience is very similar. I noticed very early on, they brought in the local, county, and city economic development people to be part of their team. I have a question for Mary Lou. This is a fun question because two things are happening at Urban Ore. One is happening on their rooftop, and the other is happening with negotiations with your workers. Mary Lou, could you give us a couple of comments on those two items?
Yes. Yesterday, I believe, day before yesterday, we hooked up our solar cells, 260 solar cells that have been put onto our roof. So now we're going to have solar electricity powering our facility. It's a wonderful thing. We have a 30,000 square foot warehouse, and we've got a whole bunch of solar power up there, and we'll have a couple of charging stations for our vehicles. And we're considering the available, actually there's a national company now that's got pay per 1 hour charge for if you want to charge up your Tesla. But we're going to use it mostly for our own equipment. And so solar power is one wonderful thing. And yes, in about, well, actually less than 2 weeks now, I will be advertising to replace me. Please replace me as administrator.
You deserve a rest.
Thank you. I think so. The company will benefit if I do. No, it's a wonderful thing. And what we're planning on doing after we replace me, we'll replace Dan as general manager. And then we will, by the end of the year, I hope, sell the operation to our staff as a worker-owned co-op.
Terrific.
So, yeah.
Terrific. Thank you for that report.
I wanted to, can I
please.
just say one thing? I wanted to say, Elizabeth said, repair is about what it means to you to bring in for kids to bring in their stuffed animals or whatever. And one of the best benefits of being in this enterprise at all is what it means to people to walk around the warehouse and look at all the stuff for sale and say, oh, look at that. I had one of those when I was a kid. That's a wonderful thing. And then they thank us for existing. It's just a wonderful business to be in.
Great. And it leads me right into my next question for Elizabeth. Elizabeth, the book is terrific. You and John did a sensational job.
Thank you.
If you have the energy and the time, it would be great if you could write a shorter book, just repeating all of the anecdotes of what reuse does for people and what it does for their lives. I know we've all had those experiences, but you seem to have several on the tip of your tongue, and that would be a wonderful essay or a little booklet at all. And finally, my question to you, Elizabeth, are you available for groups? I see several people in the chat saying, let's get together and get started. I assume that you're generous with your time and working with new groups by internet or meetings, hopefully after the pandemic.
Yes, I am. And I want to answer the question. I just saw in the chat that yes, repair cafes are totally free of charge. No one gets paid, not the organizer, not the volunteers. Warwick is privileged to have 30 volunteers who come from 9 different towns, and our repair cafes attract people from 13 to 19 different towns, on average 75 to 85 at an event. We do, however, we are able to offer bicycle repairs. We have a repair coach who operated his own bike shop in Manhattan for 39 years. We have Fix-It Bob, who when he retired from corporate America became a handyman. All these people, if you bring in the lamp and you know what's wrong with it and you've got the plug, we're happy to fix it. We've now learned, after having doing this for 4 years, that people often don't know what they need or don't know how to apply it. Long story short, we say to you, the hardware store is down the street, it's about a mile, this is what you need to get. We have a box of the kinds of things we are most asked to supply. You may purchase that from us at the price it costs you. It's up to you, or go to the hardware store and bring it to the next repair cafe. Same thing with the basic bike parts. Many people appreciate that as a convenience, and they will donate to the reuse box the wrong thing that they brought that might fit somebody else's. And I wanted, have I got a minute to tell a really quick
Please.
story?
Yes, as a matter of fact, a question came in that you could answer as well. How often do you hold your repair cafes?
Warwick hosts theirs until the pandemic. We used to host ours every other month. I got together all the volunteers and polled them, as one of them who has her own sewing and repair business said, we can be cheerful volunteers if it's once every other month. Some organizations do it once a month, some do it twice a year, some do it 4 times a year. It all depends upon what are your volunteers able to commit. Without the volunteers, I would be sitting at home with an idea in my head and no place to go. You need to keep the volunteers happy. Oh, back to the money thing. We do put out a jar that says donations cheerfully accepted. It costs us $80 at every repair cafe to supply the volunteers with pizza and beverages for lunch. I also refuel the coffee and tea bit, even though we have a 13-year-old girl who loves to bake, and when her dad comes in to get something fixed, we always get something hot from the oven. But it's not about making money. I really wanted a materials exchange with a makerspace. For a variety of reasons, that couldn't happen. But the Repair Cafe has done a wonderful job of connecting people. Most of the repair coaches who volunteer, sooner or later, bring a spouse, bring a friend, bring a neighbor, and they volunteer too. They love the collaboration. During the pandemic, I've been sending out an email every month just to keep connected and ask people to send me pictures of the things that they fixed or a funny story that we heard. And the thing I get over and over again is, I've got Repair Cafe withdrawal. When can we see each other again? They miss the collaboration. They miss the sense of, we made somebody's life better. At every Repair Cafe, there is some story that's so hilarious. Somebody brings in something and writes on the job ticket, it was a little figurine of a horse, busted butt, fix the balls. What? Then there was, at our second Repair Cafe, that was a pop-up. We were part of a maker space that was all the objects that were being sold that day. It was Thanksgiving weekend, were made with pieces that they were reused, repurposed, upscaled. We were clearing the tables to go, and a woman who looked like she hadn't taken very good care of herself came in, and she was holding something in her hand, and she said, "You're not leaving, are you?" I said, "Well, unfortunately, we have to, because the band is unloading. The band gets this space for wedding reception next, and we've got to go." And she said, I have to have this fixed." And I said, "Well, what is it?" And it was a silver chain. And I said, "Well, there's a jewelry store right down the street." She said, "I don't have the money for that." And I said, "We'll be back here, the regular Repair Cafe, in a month. I can't wait." And I finally turned to her and I said, what's really happening here? The chain held an engraved vial with her grandson's ashes. And she said, I haven't been without it since the day they gave it to me for the funeral. So I went flying out to the parking lot and said, Suzanne, please come back. And I went to the band and I said, fellas, you've got to give us another 15 minutes. It really, really is a matter of life and death. Mm. While Suzanne made the repair to the chain, the woman told us the god awful story of how somebody who had tried to help somebody else ended up losing his life. Mm. I can barely tell it to you now. And when the chain was fixed and Suzanne put the vial on it and hooked it around the woman's neck, she threw her arms around Suzanne and said, you don't know what you've done today. That's why we're there.
Well, thank you for that. And I think these anecdotes are important. I've got one more question and then hopefully.
And Neil, I do have some more questions. So ask the question.
Well, quick question to Jacob. I was of all the things I learned, I just couldn't believe that you guys are handling wicker furniture among all the things you're handling. But here's my question. Pure Tech, this company that's coming over and building a polypropylene, that's a major activity. As you know, low-grade plastics, everyone wants to burn them. And this is a company that's going to make new products out of it. Same thing is happening in film plastic. How did the reuse car to get in touch with Pure Tech and get them to start working with you, which I think is a major accomplishment?
Sure. So that pays a little bit in tune to our strategy assessment that we've had for the region. We were able to leverage, as I mentioned before, an Appalachian Regional Commission grant that helped us hire consultants from MSW Consulting. Excellent work. Yes. And they did a stakeholder analysis of the region and identified where these investors might be coming in and bringing in this Pure Cycle facility. And so what we found from that analysis that there's a lot of organizations and businesses maybe doing similar things, but isolated and not knowing about everyone else doing them as well. And so having that connection and that communication expands those collaborations even more so to where that little market isn't having to survive on its own out by itself in a rural community, but it's connected to this larger central nervous system of the region. So having that stakeholder analysis is really helpful. But then, as you mentioned before, we connected to the local economic development authorities, and they have a full tier of organizations of every type and every kind of the region that could be, interested or related to the type of work that we did. So we just started there first with those free resources.
I want to give a shout out to MSW. It's a great small independent consulting firm. I know you're working with Steve Deasy, who's doing a great job for you. And I know I've worked with Karen Dieter from that company, and I know she's getting involved as well. So you made a good choice of your consultants.
We think so too.
Yeah, Tracy, why don't you take over?
Okay. So Mary Lou wants to make a comment, but first I'm just going to read a few of the questions that were sent to us with the registrations. So, are there any federal funds available for startups? Now, Jacob has been talking about the Appalachian Regional Commission, but that's regionally limited. Is there a body of research that is available for making the case? And now I've lost the question. So
I'll chime in a little bit there on that.
Yeah,
so,
why don't you start? Yes.
Sure. The Appalachian Regional Commission actually covers 13 states along the eastern half of the continent. So you'd be surprised that where you could be eligible for these funding opportunities. And then beyond that, there are the Brownfields programs, which is essentially a federal program to allow funding to remediate an abandoned property that used to be an industry-focused initiative that had environmental issues later on. So there's funding for cleaning that up as well. But then also the USDA, we've leveraged grants for them for solid waste management in rural areas. They're a federal organization that has a lot of funding opportunity there. So I would say that those three, DEP, USDA, and ARC, those are your trifecta of funding sources federally.
Thank you. we're running a little bit out of time. Let's have Mary Lou make her comment, and then we can just, if people want to stay, we'll continue for a few more minutes. So Mary Lou, you want to go ahead?
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tracy. I just wanted to say, also following on Jacob's comments about building community and connecting people and connecting existing organizations, one thing to consider, Urbanor has designed community scale resource, we call them resource management facility. You might want to call it solid waste facility, but we say, Dan always says waste isn't waste until it's wasted. So we have designed resource management facilities for communities around the world. And one of the things we did for a community north of London was they had a 13-acre site, and we designed a facility there and designed in a community resource center in the middle called the center. And what it did was provide community meeting rooms and community organization rooms and a place for people to congregate. Because if you give people a chance, just like the repair cafes, if you give people a chance to gather, they will contribute to each other, feed off each other. It's a social event. And you can create social events. You can have actual cafes there, serve them a cup of coffee and a donut, and they will come. And they'll get to meet their neighbors, and they'll bring stuff to repair, and they'll do all kinds of volunteering, and they'll want to work there. And it is a community resource place that deals in the physical resources as well. So when you're thinking of what to do with that outdated wasting facility, just like an abandoned strip mine, if it's an outdated wasting facility, you can redesign it to be a zero waste recovery facility, and you're also helping the community develop itself.
I'm going to add something to that, because anyone who goes to visit Urbanor in Berkeley will see that its presence has attracted other reuse and recycling companies, and the flow of people to Urbanor, as well as these other companies, have attracted restaurants and cafes, because there's a flow of people. So they've created a community of reuse and eating good food. So I wanted to make that point. Go ahead, back to you, Tracy. Why don't you go ahead with questions from the chat?
Sorry about that, I was muted. Some people may need to leave, so I just want to not drive people away, but thank everyone for coming. Assure you that you'll get the link and other materials in the next few days at Monday at the latest. And thank the presenters for really spectacular presentations, and Neil and Abby and everyone else. So back to the questions, if I can find them. What can states and governments do to incentivize these activities? I think that's a really good question.
Let me just add, I just read a recent account, I'm getting more information, but the city of Pawtucket, Rhode Island, has just created a program to make it easier for households to donate their reusables. I'll be getting more details and share them with everyone on the group. It's a nice innovation that we could all share. I'll get that information out.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Ooh.
I would also say too, the city of Portland, Oregon has passed legislation or city ordinance that prioritizes deconstruction over demolition, to where it incentivizes that alternative market instead. So there's a whole new economy around deconstruction there now. So that's a good example that you could look at too.
So I think there's a need to gather some of this information together. So that, and so I want to mention something. There was one request in the chat that we continue a discussion online. And so I'll be communicating with several people about how we might want to do that. And number two, in the process of publicizing this event, it occurred to me that we really need to have a New York Zero Waste Network, because I mean, I'm amazed that some people found this event, but we were not networked before. And now we have like more than 100 people from New York who had an interest in this, even though some of them couldn't make the event. So I will be, anyone who's interested could get in touch with me, and we'll be kind of having a little meeting to see how we want to proceed. But I think it's the next thing to happen. And then there will be a way to hold future webinars on reuse, repair, and all kinds of other zero waste activities.
On that point, Tracy, let me mention that coming up in May, the Recycle Hawaii people are going to have, with the Institute, are going to have another reuse forum webinar. And we will get that announcement out to all the people who signed up to listen to this today. We haven't selected the presenters. I would, of course, invite these 4 presenters back, but we've got them documented, so we may want to do 4 more others, so we'll build our library of innovative reuse and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I have at least one suggestion I'll share with you. So
Okay,
yeah. And there's undoubtedly people here who have more questions, and we could discuss them online, or once you get the emails for the presenters, you can email them directly. So I think
the address right now. The address is on Parkside Avenue. What we'll do is we'll go
what's going on here?
I think we
I
have
was
some
just leaving it in
invaders.
case it was a question, but I muted it really quickly. So scary.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I think we might want to say goodbye. While our energy is high, but I am just blown away by all the projects that people are doing, and just I think we now might have a critical mass in Warren County, which was my goal, to start something, because now people have a vision of what it might be. And
Well,
so
I want to thank the 4 presenters for painting terrific visions that really are common through all of our work. So thanks to the presenters, thanks for the people who listened, and thanks to Tracy and of course Abby for their work. So we'll be in touch, and thank you again for listening.
okay.
Thanks
Good
all.
night.
Thank
Have a
you.
lovely, beautiful day outside. It's gorgeous. And take care, everyone.